Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Greg Elliott, and once again I am joined today by my good friend, Zach Ingo Finch. How you doing, Zach?
Yeah, right, mate. It'll be Wednesday when you guys listen to this, but yeah, doing well.
It's Wildcard Wednesday, the day where we frantically scramble for something to talk about that isn't Saints, because that is miserable at the moment, and we don't need any more of that.
That's strictly true. I'm happy to do a historical essay on somebody that we randomly have been involved with or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. Looking back at the better times of being a Saints fan rather than the
past. Or someone that could potentially build the future, absolutely not the present.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of the future, that's a beautiful segue. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of loan watch, something that we don't normally pay a lot of attention to as the season goes on, but we've currently got 7 players out on loan. Building for the future and doing things potentially. So I thought we'd check in and see how they were getting on. So I've got it all in front of me, so I guess Zach will just get straight to it.
For sure.
So the first on my list is Ronnie Edwards, who he's gone out on loan to QPR.
They really, really like him. I have seen a lot of social media content. And a lot of people being like, oh my goodness gracious me, we need to sign this lad immediately. And us crying out for a defender, which is very funny.
Funny, yeah.
Very funny. And obviously, we, if I remember rightly, we signed him because he was like, I can't remember who he was on loan to. But he was on loan to a League One side, right? And he was absolutely bossing it. And so we were like, yeah, let's hit this guy up. And then he had an unimpressive debut, if I remember rightly, in like one of our cup games. And then after that, they were like, no. And then like he's gone on loan to a Championship side, and very similar to somebody else probably on your list, so Shea, absolutely bossing it. So yeah.
So he's had 8 appearances for them since he's gone out on loan in January. He scored a goal from centre back. Perfect. He played one game at right back, but mostly has been slotting in as one of the main centre backs. And in his most recent game, managed to help keep a clean sheet in a 4-0 win against Derby. So,
dang. I'm pretty sure I've seen he's had like a couple man of match awards as well. Like he is somebody that's clearly gone out and impressed, and fair play to him.
He's become a solid mainstay in that team. Like he wasn't in the squad for the first game, presumably because he'd only just got there like that day for Watford. Then he had half an hour against Luton at the start of January, and since then he has played every single minute.
Dang.
So, in fact, it was in that 4-0 win against Derby that he got his goal. So,
good Lord. Do we know where QPR sit at the table? Like, is this one of those situations where they potentially get promoted and poach him? I can't imagine QPR being at that space, but I also don't want to mug off the entirety of QPR.
Off the top of my head, without having the table in front of me while it loads, I think that they are in contention for playoffs, potentially.
Yeah,
they're 13th.
Okay.
So not quite. I mean, it is a bit of a crazy league, the Championship.
Yeah, that could change towards the end. But yeah, like, because where I'm at is if he's doing a good number for us now, and some of the rumours, which we don't usually pay too much attention to, are true, but also that we could have a mass clear out at the end of the season, potentially someone that's lovely to bring back, but also it's difficult, right? Like, we are the epitome of don't fall in love with loan players, and then we fall in love with loan players.
Could do a real solid job for us next year.
Yeah.
But I guess if the price is right, we might not say no. 13th, but 4 points off of the playoffs.
God,
and the Championship's a nuts league, isn't it?
What a year. I mean, to be fair, the Premier League's been pretty weird this year too, mate. We've already discussed like Spurs and Man United before being in like places that we would never ever expect to see them.
I know. I'm just getting excited for next year already, mate.
What do you mean, Greg? What happened to your hopes that we might survive?
Yeah. Anyway, Moving on to the list. As you alluded to, next on my list is Shea Charles, out on loan at Sheffield Wednesday. And it's no secret that he is beloved by Sheffield Wednesday fans. I've got some stats before we go on a bit of a chat about him. So he's played 30 games for them this season. He's got 1 goal and 5 assists, although we know that's not really what he's in the team for. But the impressive stat for me is he has played 95% of their minutes in the Championship this season.
That's decent, considering he was pretty much a bit player last season to like go in and get your first team football. And I'm wondering if that's one of the reasons potentially why, right? Like, I feel like he's going to have to take the place of Big Les. I just don't see
100%.
Sheffield Wednesday having the buying power. Like,
Agreed.
I feel really bad for them in January because, like, I don't know what transpired, but obviously us terminating the loan during their fans forum, bringing him back to Staplewood for like 2 weeks to just let him go back there. And I think that there was a lot of fear that Les was going to go back to Chelsea to kind of fill in their injury crisis, because apparently, despite having 1,000 members, like 1,000 people in your team, you can still have an injury crisis. But yeah, I feel like that's not smart. That's got to be so disruptive, right? Like, okay, you're in a place, you've been playing well all season, you've been doing really well. You've been brought back to potentially either come into the first team, but not really. We haven't quite decided. Actually, no, we don't need you to. You can go back tomorrow.
I think it's less disruptive in a loan spell, because in a loan spell they're not spending their entire week there, right? Like, the whole deal is they spend some of their time at Staplewood and some of their time at Sheffield. So it's sort of a weird split. So it probably wasn't as disruptive as it could have been, but it's not ideal. But, you know, he got back there. He's doing a job there. He's getting the minutes in.
Time.
You say they might not have the buying power, Zach, but for all of the craziness and tumultuous we talked about around that time and around that fan forum, they currently sit in 9th, only 3 points outside of the playoffs. So, I mean, it's not outside of the realms of possibility that there'll be a Premier League team trying to buy him next season, which is...
But what about all of the people that want Danny Roll to be our manager?
Right. Well... yeah.
Look, it'll be where it'll be,
mate. Burn that bridge when we get to it. Like, I don't want to write Juric off yet, because even if my opinion changes of him and he does become a manager that we think needs to be gone, Sports Republic might not agree, and they proved that they're going to stick to their guns one way or the other with Russell Martin. So,
yeah, we'll see what happens, right? But either way, I'm glad that he's doing well.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the rest of this, but first a message from our partners at Bioniq.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements, designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Okay, and we are back. Okay, carrying on through the list, there is a pattern here, Zach, of players doing much better away from us than they do.
Yeah, I think I mentioned
that's going to really shine through at the start of this list, but you know, stick with it. So Sam Madozi, obviously, as we all know, out on loan at Anderlecht, playing in the Europa League this season. Although most of his games have come in the Belgian Premier League. 14 appearances, 2 goals and 1 assist in the season so far. But in recent weeks has been out of action with a hip injury. He's been out for about 4 weeks.
Yeah, I was wondering. I do keep an eye on the team sheets and who's out and what they're all up to. And obviously, I have a weird soft spot for Anderlecht. I think I've talked about it in the past. So it's nice to see him doing well there. But yeah,
out with injury for the last 4 weeks, but in their most recent game, he was back on the bench as an unused substitution. So hopefully back to fitness, and it was just a knock and nothing too serious to contend with. hopefully be back in fine form soon. Next on my list is Juan, who's out on loan to Gustepe, who's our young centre forward that we sort of brought in and shipped straight off.
Yeah, I genuinely, I'm sat there like, who? That must have flown under my radar because obviously I paid attention to Matsuki, and then we had like Liss, and we had other people. And like, was he the one who was also supposedly signing contract at the same time as Wellington?
That's right, yeah. The young Brazilian lad, yeah. So he's out in Gustepe at the moment. He's played 19 games for them this season. He's got 6 goals and 4 assists, but he is currently out injured with an unknown injury as from the most recent game week in that league.
It's not ideal.
Not a huge amount of news that I've been able to find around him. Turkish league reporting is not the easiest to come across in English language, it has to be said.
It is not.
But what I have written down is that he averages 208 minutes per goal, so fits in nicely with the rest of our strike force. In fact, that's probably a high average.
That's going to be better than most of our strike force, mate. It's one of those weird signings where, like, I don't know whether or not he feels like he is ever going to be a Southampton signing, right? I don't know how you feel about that, but there are some players that we've sort of brought in for the group model that do very much feel like that, right?
Like the young goalkeeper there, is it Liz? Matthias Liz?
Yeah, like we spoke about, because obviously he had like a pre-season appearance, right, before completing a transfer that was, no one said how much money it was, which I find weird that you can just like not say how much it is in an internal transfer, because theoretically, what can it just be like a quid? I'm sure there are rules around it, don't get me wrong. But either way, I don't know how I feel about that kind of stuff. And it's the same with a couple of players, like where you think, because obviously we're bringing in some players specifically for the under-21s, which you'd like to think means eventually they're going to be promoted into the senior squad. But when we're just shipping them directly out on loan, we haven't really utilised putting them back in anymore. And as I briefly discussed in our Spores episode, like maybe that will start to change. But like, where I'm at, mate, is that you're like, oh, it's not about as good as the rest of our strike force. I'm relatively sure that nobody has 6 goals for our team this year.
That's a very valid point. Yeah, fair point.
With about 5 or 6 games more. And yeah, I guess it's the Turkish league. And yeah, Torpool did all right there, but also, like, who knows, mate? Who knows?
Yeah, you're right. And he's showing that he can compete and score goals and what more can you. And Gustepe's sort of flying high in the league at the moment. To be fair, like 6th, which I think is sort of higher than where they normally expect to finish in the league. So yeah, fair play. Sticking with the Gustepe and the group signing theme, Matsuki, who is an attacking midfielder, the young Japanese lad you mentioned earlier, out on loan. He has had 19 appearances for them this season, with 1 goal and 4 assists. Seems to be a fairly solid, fairly mainstay in their team, either coming on off the bench or starting at the attacking midfield role. But yeah, seems to be doing all right. Couple of goals, getting involved in it. Again, Turkish league news, otherwise hard to come by.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Like I feel like they should do a better job. Like they used to have a segment that literally was like Loan Watch, where they would talk about players out on loan, or like, I think they should do a better job in generally keeping up to date and keeping everybody up to date with, especially if it's players they want to bring back, right? Like I can understand why sort of like with Ben Broughton-Diaz or Sam Amu, like he's gone now. There's an obligation to buy, so there's not really any point to letting us know how his progress is going from like a club perspective. But and I guess with Ben Broughton-Diaz, I don't know if it's on your list. He's on your list.
He is on my list. Yeah,
but like with that, it's one of the things where, like, I guess I wouldn't call them rivals, but you know what I mean? Like, it's because it's like a championship English side.
Yeah.
We don't really get as much information as we probably should on how our players are doing, because that in that sense, the idea is that probably he isn't going to return, right? I don't think there's an obligation to buy with him, but I don't know if he'd want to come back. And I know that he's been quite coy about it, and it's whether or not Sheffield can afford him. But yeah, with some of these like other sort of signings, it would be, if they are supposedly Southampton players and they are going to come into the squad at some point, I think it would be nice to get information in a more digestible format. And if that information is being put out there, then and you know about it, and it's not just a article, like a one-liner on Southampton's website, please let us know, because I'd love to have that as like an actual source of information rather than us having to.
I have gone out and searched for this.
Yeah, and it's difficult,
and
right?
I
It shouldn't be.
didn't find such an article. I looked on my standard couple of statistics websites, and I had a cursory Google through the local newspapers of the clubs involved to see if they had anything particularly interesting to say. But yeah, absolutely, let us know. Ben Broughton-Diaz is next on my list, but we'll come back to that after a message from our partners at Zencastr. So, here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner, with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Okay, yeah, so as you alluded to, I didn't really know whether to include him on this list because it's up in the air as to whether he comes back, but I think that you mentioned it's an option to buy, not an obligation, and whether they'll be in a position to do that for the price we want, I don't know.
I think that's why he's been very clear.
6 appearances for the Blades since joining them on loan. 2 goals, 1 assist. Started off really well in the start of those appearances. That's where all of those goals and goal appearances came from. But didn't manage a huge amount in a 55-minute appearance and a 3-0 loss to Hull, and had like a 19-minute cameo in their most recent game where they beat Swansea. So
it's a difficult run, right? Like, when we were start of the season, we thought maybe it would be a good transfer. Again, we saw him in open training. We were like, maybe this is exactly what we need, and then was kind of played in, I think, sort of out of position. But then I feel like by the time Juric came in, if there was a chance for that sort of quote unquote redemption arc for him, I think that it had already been decided by that point that he wasn't going to be here, right? Like that seems to be the case for a couple of the loanees we've got, and a couple of people that transferred out, is that like they were like, nah, shut up shop, right? And then they've just not had the opportunity under a new manager.
He might come back in the summer and, clean slate, fresh start, do a job for us in the Championship where he's capable of scoring goals, and great, fine, good. Let's hope. Or we make some money off him.
We make a profit, which is insane.
It's kind of a win-win, right?
Yeah.
Either way seems fine. Yeah, it just seemed to struggle under all of the systems here, and I think, like we alluded to it when he was playing, that when he did get on the pitch, I think he was played completely out of position.
Yeah.
Like, he was supposed to be this central defender who's like a good poacher in the box and knows how to shoot a goal, and all of a sudden we just stuck him on the left wing. That's baffling.
Again, as we pointed out, there seems to be a trend of you remove them from Southampton at the moment, and they seem to be doing either relatively really well or okay, but either way better. But then I will also point out that none of them have gone to Premier League standard areas or places or clubs, right? So they are taking it. Yeah, which may say something about sort of where our level is.
Well, moving on to a player that doesn't quite fit that mould currently, Gavin Bozzunu out on loan at Standard Liège, struggling for form. 2 appearances, no clean sheets, 6 goals shipped. Played all 90 minutes of both of those games. A 2-1 loss to Genk, who, to be fair, sit top of the table, so it kind of is what it is. But a 4-2 loss to Westerlo, who sit 13th in the league. So, yeah, not
difficult, isn't it? You come back from a long stint out. He probably came back earlier than expected. So obviously they want him to get the game time. It's difficult. And the thing is if you have been out for so long, and it really depends. I think from a mentality perspective, how difficult it is. And I know that a lot of people just seem to criticise him non-stop, and I remember people doing that long before the start of the Championship. And statistics wise, he's not the greatest, but also like he's a young player, right? Most goalkeepers are not in their prime at like 21,
Exactly.
so there's a lot of time to grow.
There's definitely potential there, and that was, I think, what we signed him up for. And look, I don't claim to be an expert in the Belgium league by any stretch of the imagination. I've not seen the goals. I don't know how many of them, if any, he's actually at fault for. You know, with a goalkeeper, that actually the goals are only half the story.
Yeah. Let's face it, like some of the goals that Rambo has let in this season have been entirely on Rambo, and some of the amazing saves that he's made this year have been on the players around because of the players around him that caused that. So, yeah, I find it difficult.
Hope that he'll find his feet, get into some form, start making some saves, get back to the player he was before he was injured. I guess that's really all it's about this loan spell, is getting those minutes under his belt, getting back to proper fitness, and getting back ready to presumably be our number one choice in the Championship next year, right?
What do you mean? Ramsdale stays, surely. He's up for a fight underneath, despite the fact he's recently come out and said that he didn't really join for any other reason than because he wanted to play under Russell Martin and help us stay up.
Yeah. Look, I don't think that Aaron Ramsdale's personality would prevent him coming to play for us for a season in the Championship if a better offer doesn't come in. I think his wage packet might. So
yeah, this is the thing. There's a lot of factors to it. I'm not going to criticize someone that's played really, really well for us this season. I'm not going to criticize somebody that chose to come here over other places.
Yeah,
despite the fact that he's had a rough season, and I'm also not going to criticise the reasons why you joined a football club. That's not really anything to do with me, to be perfectly honest. And,
no, absolutely. And I mean, let's be honest, it was always a shrewd bit of business from Saints to bring him in. Who would, if we stayed in the Premier League and made a good show of it, he would go on to be a fantastic value signing who would stay with us and keep that fight. And in the event that we went down, he is also the sort of player that, based off what we signed him for, we'll probably still make at least a break even on, probably a profit. Yeah,
it'll be what it'll be. But I don't really blame a lot of. I don't know. I don't want to say I don't blame the players entirely for what's happened this season, but I can understand where a lot of people's heads are at across the board. Right,
it's been a difficult season.
It's
been a difficult season to watch. To be involved in it must be awful. I mean, you can see that I think I shared with you the picture from the Premier League Instagram.
The Premier League famous now.
That's it, with the Bournemouth goal scorer knee sliding the celebration and me in the background, leaning on a wall, looking so happy to be in the place I love, St Mary's. Really enjoying life.
Sorry, mate. At least the pints are reasonable prices, right? Surely the pints are reasonable prices.
Anyway.
I wish Bozzunu well. There we go.
Moving on to the final player on my list, Adam Armstrong. Another player who I don't know if he will be coming back in the summer.
Do you feel that way? Genuinely?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't understand. I still am not convinced I understand the loan move if he's coming back. So, I don't know. It's a baffling one. But obviously gone to West Brom, to the Baggies. 3 appearances for them, 1 goal in his opening appearance. He scored in that opening appearance. But the news article I found told a harrowingly familiar story of how he's being stuck out on the left wing and left out to dry and not being given a shot in his natural position of playing through the middle, and how if West Brom and Tony Mowbray don't change that, they are going to continue to struggle. And the woe of his appearance on the left wing against Millwall drive an XG, which I know is a meaningless stat, but of 0.12. So,
but it's where I'm at is, well, how is that going to convince him to stay? In my opinion, is he going to stay at a place where he's also going to get no game time and out of position? I think at the moment he just wanted to recapture his form, right? I think that there are the two main reasons for the move are going to be game time and just
confidence.
Yeah, it's not, if he's not going to get starting minutes, which I doubt he's going to, and we've seen that. and he's going to be swapped out after 45 minutes every game and be started out on the left and not really given a chance to, especially where, I think you pointed out, constantly pairing him with Archer, where they're basically both kind of doing the same thing and neither of them are scoring. You may as well just send him out on loan and let him to build his confidence. But I think that he would be happy to come back in the Championship. Well, at least I'd like to think.
I hope so.
But there's a lot of players that I thought would have been or would still be happy to be here that have proven me otherwise. And then there are ones that I thought would be on the first boat out of the club that are still here. So what do I know? Again, we don't know these people as human beings. That's the problem.
Yeah, indeed. And that is the end of my list. That's the end of Loan Watch. That's all the loans I can find. Again, not the easiest thing to find who we actually have out on loan at the moment. So if I've missed anyone, apologies.
I think Don Ballard went out on loan again after being recalled to somewhere else. I think that's the only person I can think of that I know is definitely...
You're right, and I think the reason that probably hasn't come up in my research is I think that probably counts as under 21s on the website in particular that I've got my list from, so I guess that makes sense.
It's just a bit weird. But like where I'm at is that we genuinely are talking about how we don't have players and we need to make all these transfers and stuff. And I think that if and when, because it's much more of a when at this point, we go down, we have some players that are going to have now Championship experience who potentially could just slot into the side. You've got Ronnie Edwards, who's beloved, Shea Charles, that's beloved and played really well, Armour to come back and potentially do another record-breaking Championship season, Madozi, who's been doing all right, and then obviously if we want to hit up our multi-club network, maybe that's what they'll do. Obviously, that won't replace all of the recruitment that we have and all the bits and places, but yeah, just don't discount everybody who isn't here just because they're not here, I guess would be my advice. They might end up being sold, but if we make a profit off them and then we can buy better players with a better recruitment structure, that is also prudent. And I think it's important to sort of pay attention to what could be the future of the club, or alternatively, the past.
Yeah.
Guess we'll see.
Well, that takes us over Hump Day and through Wildcard Wednesday as we run out of time. Tomorrow we draw it back to a much closer future as we look forward to our game on Saturday against Brighton with a crossover episode. Sorry, I almost didn't sound excited for that.
It's me, mate. That's the one that's sad.
Pain
Come on.
creeping in.
Come on.
But until then, thank you very much for joining us, Zach. Thank you for joining me and talking through our players of the future, or prophets of the future, whatever that may be. And we will see you tomorrow, and we look very much forward to it.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.